I'm Pam, a mother, runner, business owner, and the host of the I Work For Me podcast. This podcast shares stories from the world of entrepreneurship because starting a business doesn't have to feel like a far-off dream, and running one shouldn't feel like a nightmare. Hello. So we have our keynote speaker, facilitator, professional MC, and the first online crowdfunder, Verity Price. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to I Work For Me podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here, Pam.
Wow. So tell me all about this first online crowdfunding. That sounds very intriguing.
Well, it was, and it continues to be. I was a professional singer and songwriter back in the early 2000s. I had big dreams of topping the charts and touring the world. But very quickly, the only thing I was touring was Observatory Main Road. And I realized I needed to record an album. When I discovered it was going to cost 300,000 Rand to do that, and I didn't have the money to do that, and South African music wasn't selling very well at that point, especially white English singers from Cape Town, we definitely weren't topping the charts. I was faced with the choice. Do I walk around and tell everyone how hard it is to be a musician and how unfair and eventually give up? Or do I get creative? So the honest answer is I walked around for a long time telling everyone how unfair and difficult it was to be a musician and poor me. And then eventually I was like, oh, okay, I have to either give up, walk away from this dream, or I have to get creative. And I'm so grateful I chose to get creative. And how I did that was over a cup of coffee with my sister, Kay. She is my champion and my cheerleader in life. She's older than me and will often put me back on track when I'm going down my rabbit hole of how hard life is. And over a cup of coffee in Simonstown, we brainstormed how could I record my album without going into debt. We used, I nearly said Nelson Mandela, but we're really changing track here. Edward de Bono, although I'm sure Edward de Bono would be thrilled to be compared to Nelson Mandela. These are thought leaders. But we used Edward de Bono's work on the 6 thinking hats, which is a fabulous framework for thinking differently about the problems you face. And I can highly recommend that people go and find that book and research his work. But just using a framework of thinking differently around our problem, we came up with an idea in 30 minutes. It was just 30 minutes of brainstorming that I would ask people to buy my first album before I recorded it. I asked them to buy something that didn't exist. They would replace a record label. They would completely own my journey as a musician. They'd tell me what songs to record. They would tell me what to call the album. And I was going to give 10% to uplifting women, particularly through an organization, People Opposing Women Abuse, and empowering other artists who also were struggling to get started in the music industry. And so that was my crazy idea: buy an album that doesn't exist, let's shake things up in the music industry and let's give 10% to empowering women and uplifting artists. And out I went into the world, and this was 2005, so it was before Facebook and it was before crowdfunding or Kickstarter being a word. And 2 very interesting things happened. Everyone in the music industry said, Verity, that's not going to work. That's not how music is funded. And everyone who wasn't in the music industry said, why not? That's crazy. We love it. Let's get you some posters. Let's do some e-commerce for your website. And suddenly I was this crazy girl selling an album that didn't exist. And long story short, we sold 2,000 copies of nothing in 25 countries. We gave over 30,000 Rand to the charities. And instead of becoming famous for singing, I became famous for thinking differently. And I was being invited to speak all across South Africa and in Europe. And I'd say, awesome, can I bring my band? And they'd say, no, we just want to hear about the thinking. And I was like, that was not the plan. I'm meant to be a pop star. And it was, it just suddenly my life got taken on a whole different course. And I always say to people that there's 2 big lessons that came out of this that I want to share with you that I think are relevant. The first is, it was a few weeks after having had the idea. I was at a dinner party and I was sitting next to a guy whose name was Guy, funnily enough. And Guy said, Verity, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a singer and I'm a songwriter and, that's what I do. And he said, do you have an album? And I said, no, but I've had this idea. And while I was telling Guy about my crazy idea, which I hadn't even started yet, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out 150 Rand and he said, can I take the first copy? I kind of looked at him and I looked at the money and I was like, if I take this money, I'm going to have to action my idea. I'm going to have to make it happen. And then I said to him, but Guy, like, thank you, but why are you buying my album? You haven't even heard me sing. And he said, Verity, isn't that the whole point of your project? So I was like, yes, give me the cash. Let's do this. And in that moment, it just became very clear is that your word creates your world. The way you're speaking about an idea, a business venture, what it is that you're trying to achieve, where it is that you're going, the difference that you want to make, that's what draws people like Guy to you to help you get there. And so the more I told people that I was trying to do things differently and make a difference, the more people who believed in that kind of came around me and made it happen. The second lesson was when I got to the end of it, and I wasn't famous for singing, but I was famous for doing things differently, was that sometimes your ego has got a very clear idea of what your life should look like. It's got that picture painted out. This is what it's meant to look like. And sometimes it can be quite a hard journey. Like I was rowing upstream, trying to crack the music industry. On the other side, there was this much softer voice, which was my soul saying, actually, no, you're here to show other people how they can shift their thinking, how they can overcome their challenges. And you have a story to share. And if you sing a song right at the end of the keynote, that's going to be your little bit of music. And when I started listening to my soul, my life got a lot easier. Like I'm still in a challenging industry, but I feel like I'm flowing with the current. And so those were my two big lessons that came out of being one of the world's first crowdfunders.
I'm absolutely, wow. I'm speechless. I'm sitting here, I've got goosebumps. And
no ways.
Lessons. Okay, we can finish this interview right now. There we go.
And we're done.
We're done. That is amazing, Verity. I mean, I love the fact that, as you were talking about the idea that you were going through, and I know from experience, it's a matter of talking about it is one thing, but then suddenly being pushed into a situation where you don't have a choice. You now have to do it. And Guy giving $150 was the first step of, sorry, now I've bought your first album. What are you going to do about it? You go, I've got to do this. I'm literally, it's amazing. And so that was in 2005. So 6 years on, did you ever do the album?
Yes, so I recorded in 2007. The project took way longer than I thought. Okay. So also to remember that when you have a business idea, the idea for me was like, this is so great. I'll be finished in 6 months. And a year in, I'd only sold 400 albums. And I was like, I'm not where I should be. I have a whole other story around starting to hit up against depression and anxiety at that time. And the thing that shifted me through that was realizing, and I think this is for all entrepreneurs, we've all got that there that we want to get to. We've got that big goal. And then we've got here where we are. And then there's the gap, and if you've ever been in London, you know that tube telling you mind the gap. Well, let me tell you, if you don't mind the gap, you just fall into it. So when I was going, I've only sold 400 albums and, I've still got 1,600 to go and it's not working and it's not happening. That's when I started falling into the gap. And the thing that got me out the gap was this little go-to word that is very out there and everyone's like, hey, shawau, but it works. And it was gratitude. And I had this moment one day when I was really feeling sorry for myself. And I was doing what my mom said you must do when things aren't going well, which is tidy your cupboards. Like if you're not in control of anything else, like sort something out in your house. Yes. So I was tidying my cupboards and I found a letter that my dad wrote to me. My dad passed away when I was 24 and I was living in London. I hadn't started singing. I didn't even have the courage to follow my dream. And he'd written me a letter about 3 months before he died, trying to encourage me to just go for it, just take a chance, see what you're capable of. And I found this letter and I was reading it. And right at the end, he said, my message to you, my darling daughter, is work on an attitude of gratitude, polish your goals daily, and watch for a miracle, because I'm watching too. So it was but it was such a reminder. And I put that letter down, like I finished having quite a big sob. And I went to my laptop and when people used to buy my album, their names would go on my website with what number they'd bought. And I went and I started looking at 400 names. That is a lot of people. But isn't it amazing? Because my there was 2,000, I was not paying attention or being grateful for the 400 who had said yes, who were behind my business, who did believe in where I was going. And so getting grateful about that made such a massive difference to the journey. And this is where I met you, Pam, because at that point I realized I couldn't just keep trying to do this online. I needed to get offline. I needed to change my approach. And I started going and speaking at business network meetings. And you were one of the people there that bought it from me after having met me in person, not just me trying to get to people online. And that's when I got given a new career of becoming a speaker. So the challenge actually pushed me into a new strength. It gave me a new possibility. And by the time I released the album in 2008, and I posted 2,000 copies around the world, and amazingly, most people got them. There was a few that came back and we figured out how to get them to them. I had a total change in career. So it was quite extraordinary.
I do remember that very, very clearly. Buying the album, but not, I remember getting the demo of what it was going to be, but then actually receiving the final product. And I still have it. I mean, I've got rid of all CDs, but I have Verity CD, both the demo and the final product, so that you can, to me, it's, yes, I have the MP3, so I've got it on my phone and I do listen to it. So you to those few 3,000 of us that have got your album, I promise.
Oh, thank you.
But so it's done a whole complete about turn. So do you still sing at all in public?
I sing when I do keynote talks. I always end my talks with a song, and because I was I am the kind of songwriter who writes about life and writes about facing your fears and believing in yourself, so it was already quite motivational songs anyway. They tie in really well with my talks, so I get to sing one song and connect with my audience, and it's perfect. It's enough.
That's great. That means that part of it that you always wanted is still part of where you're at. So
very much so.
The thing is that you have to forget your dream. You just need to tweak it slightly so that it gets you to where you need to be. That's wonderful. Well done, Verity. Well done. That's absolutely phenomenal. So you learned a lot in that process, and you've now been a speaker, and you're doing all these amazing things. So what do you do now? Now that you've no longer singing and you are speaking, what else do you do?
So what happened was my story actually got sent to Edward de Bono, and I got sent a picture of him holding a copy of my album, and I was like, oh my word, here's this man who has revolutionized the way people think strategically and laterally, holding proof that I'd acted on an idea that I'd got from using his tools. And my sister and I, Kay and I, got to meet him when his last ever visit to South Africa, which was back in 2010. And we were actually both invited to teach his work. So we got accredited, myself in Six Thinking Hats, Kay in Lateral Thinking, and we started training his work. But for both of us, it pushed us into the field of facilitation, because we started learning how to work with teams, how to get people aligned, changing their thinking so that they could change their results. And I've ended up kind of coming up with what I call team alignment processes, is to help people understand what's happening inside their brains that gets in the way of our creativity and stops us from accessing, innovation and then the courage to act on it. And I'm very, very fortunate that I get to work in really big businesses and tiny little startups, just helping shake up people's thinking and get them excited about the there that they want to get to, but grateful about the here they are, and then all the steps in between to move them towards their destination.
That is such an inspiring story. So you've taken all that you've learned and you've now developed, so you've learned from amazing people, which have taught you to teach. I love the way that you're talking about that we don't stop ourselves from accessing those creativity, those ideas, and those ideas that seem to just come from nowhere and hit you like a ton of bricks, and they go, and then not having the bravery to actually step into it and go, I have an idea. And do you find, because I mean, you obviously work in the corporate environment, do you find that in the corporate environment they're very open to creative thought processing, or is it not? Because 90% of
desperate for it. They are desperate for it.
Brilliant.
I've yet to go into an industry or a business where they're not saying, please, can we access more creativity? But they want to access valuable creativity. Sometimes people get confused between novelty and innovation. And novel ideas can have a little bit of value for a short time, but innovative ideas can be game changers. But the challenge that everyone sits with is exactly what you were talking about, is you've had the idea, do you act on it? And do you have the courage to fail forward to see what's possible? Because no innovation and no change happens without many little failures to eventually get to the final picture that we see. And it's giving ourselves permission. And that's, I mean, entrepreneurs, that's what we do. We constantly, small little failures to build towards a success. And the more space you have to do that, and the more forgiving you are of yourself and of your team to do that, the quicker you will get to the things that work. But I've yet to find an industry that doesn't want to access that mind power that's sitting in their organization.
So it's so insightful to hear that, because so many, and especially entrepreneurs, we kind of go, oh, well, the reason we left is because people didn't want to hear our ideas. So is it that, so it's finding the right people to express your to as well. It's also great for the entrepreneurial space, because that means that then those ideas at least are coming out in business and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
it is, you know what, for an idea to grow, it has to be in a safe space. And a lot of the work I do with teams is around understanding the psychological safety that is needed for any creativity to come forward. And I'm actually busy running a leadership course at the moment, where we're looking at, as a leader, like, are you bringing out the best in your people, or are you squashing it just by nature of your personality, or, you know, just the energy you bring into the room? And just as is human nature, the less safe we feel, the less creative we become. Because if I'm not feeling safe, if I feel like I might be criticized or judged, why would I put a crazy idea out there? What I'm going to do is put a small, safe idea out there that can't fail. And what you want is a team, like, here's a crazy idea, and let's, like, Edward de Bono says, it's easier to tame a wild idea than it is to make a boring idea interesting. So, you know, we need to be encouraging in ourselves and others. Let's have wild ideas and let's tame it later, make it feasible later. But let's not start with this little safe idea that I'm trying to put icing on to sell to my public. They're going to feel that. They're going to know that. They're going to, this feels like what I've seen before. Have that wild idea. Not everyone's going to jump for it initially, but it's going, let's build the believers as we go.
Okay, I love that. That's fantastic. So the big thing, and I can hear, so you're working with bigger companies, with bigger teams, with corporates and that sort of thing. If you take that thought process that you're talking about and talk about entrepreneurs, which are normally 1, 2, 3 people teams, I mean, if I'm on my own, how am I possibly going to have a team that is going to help me to develop my next creative idea? How do I do that?
So if you've got someone like my sister, go find a friend, have a coffee with them. I think that's why it's so important that entrepreneurs belong to networks. So even if someone is doing a very different business to you, it's lovely to invite in that diversity of thinking. And look, some people are really good at coming up with that idea on their own, but then you're not having someone challenge it and getting you to improve it and tweak it. So find your community, even if they're not working with you. I think all of us have got people that are champions and are cheerleaders. Those are the people that you should have around you. Have a mentor, a coach, someone that you check in with, you know, once a month, just to, again, like, assess where you're going and see if the thinking you're doing is your best possible thinking. I actually think it's easier for the smaller businesses to get this right. And I feel for the big corporates, because sometimes, as someone once said to me, it was the difference between men and women, but I'm going to apply it to corporates and entrepreneurs. But I'll give it to you anyway. This is from my sister Kay. She always tells me great things. So basically, men or big corporates are like tankers in the ocean. So they've got all this momentum and they're moving forward, and there's quite a lot of noise that's going with it, and they're making stuff happen. And women or entrepreneurs are like yachts, okay? So they're very nifty. Now, if a tanker needs to change direction, that is kilometers of time before it can even do the smallest shift. And there's like, we're changing, you know, and it's painful. Whereas a yacht just goes, whoop, whoop, try this, so that's the advantage we have as entrepreneurs and smaller businesses. And I know all my clients that are in big corporates, if they see this, they'll know what I'm talking about. They feel the frustration of like, inside the organization, people are ready to do this, but they've got much bigger things to shift. So that's the advantage we have as medium or small businesses, is we have that adaptability and that ability to pivot, which we've needed so much in the last year. And then we also saw some big businesses that gave themselves permission to stop and change direction instantly, which is pretty incredible. But yeah, so there's my little bit on yachts and tankers.
But also the way that you say that there are the tankers that have done the stop and okay, we need to do that. So done. And it is possible.
Or they just jump off the tanker onto a yacht. I'm not sure if they can stop and change.
Okay. Well, there's doing things, there are different ways of doing things. And I think that kind of comes back to the conversation where it is about thinking about situations differently in order to come up with different ideas, whatever they are.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And this is now what you do on a full-time basis.
Yeah, so I work predominantly running kind of strategic team sessions, so 1 to 3 day strat sessions to get teams aligned, to get them really excited about the future, very clear on their purpose, a common understanding of their values, the behaviors that are going to support them as a team, and then strategically going right. So, what are our strategic objectives? How are we going to make that happen? And then innovative ways to get there. So that's a main bulk of my work. Around that, there's a lot of keynotes that speak to the same content, but in a more rah-rah motivational, let's get the conference up, and they get a song. So that always is quite good. It's a little bonus point. But building into that, I do a lot of stuff around positive mindset, positive psychology. How do we buoy ourselves up in stressful times? What are the proven habits now through 20 years of research in positive psychology that can help individuals and teams be more resilient in stress and be more successful in the long run? I think all the research is showing that happiness is not a byproduct of success. Happiness drives success. And that experience with my dad and getting that letter to be grateful, that totally changed my journey, because up until then, I was like, when I've recorded my album, when I'm a famous singer, like when I'm living in Bishop's Court or whatever it is, then I'll be happy. And it was like, well, I'd still be quite bloody miserable, honestly, if those had been the requirements for happiness. This showed me, get happy now, look after yourself now, because you might be on a long journey, but enjoy the journey. And sometimes the destination shifts as you do that. So I do a lot of that work with businesses and individuals. And then bringing all of that together, because I've ended up in this world of speaking and sharing my thoughts, I've become really passionate about helping other people learn how to tell their story. And so I've got a course that I run in a lot of businesses called Present with Power, and getting people over that confidence issue, because whether you are needing to present in a corporate space or just in a one-on-one space with a client, it's like, are my ideas coming across? Are they seeing what I'm saying? Are they getting emotionally connected to where I'm wanting to take them? And so that's been another unexpected thing that came out of all of this.
Wow. And so what is the name of your business?
So you know what, I'm going through an interesting transition, but you'll see on the screen there, it's just Verity, Think, Act, Succeed. And I'm coming back to actually operating under my name. I have been operating as a business called TAP Results, Team Alignment Processes. But I've actually realized that my name means truth, and my journey has been to discover my truth and share my truth. And I've been trying to operate like I'm a business, you're working with TAP Results. And then I was like, but they're not. And my clients kept saying, we don't book TAP Results, we book Verity. So I'm going through an interesting brand change of coming back to being Verity and going, I'm not trying to compete with those incredible big training companies out there who they're an engine that works incredibly well. I am just a one-woman show who's had some pretty significant life experiences and have accessed some incredible tools that I can now teach people. So that's the journey I'm on at the moment, but it's Verity, Think, Act, Succeed.
That's such an insightful space to be in, to recognize that this is what I wanted to be. And that was the idea. I mean, even talking about your 10-year goals to be, here and here, and now that you're actually understanding that happiness is important and doing that within your business space as well, to go from, okay, so I'm not tap results, I am Verity Think Act Succeed. That's such a big wow and such a big aha moment for you. But most of us as entrepreneurs, to go, what we thought it was initially doesn't have to be what it is right now.
Yeah. You have to be open to the picture changing. And can you adapt with that? Because, I mean, look, sometimes I think it's important to have that single-minded focus. And I mean, there's so many famous examples of people who just, they stuck their course. So we can learn a lot from that. I always just go, stick your course if it feels like it is still moving forward. I know for me with the music industry, things were happening, but there were so many things that felt like it was not working. And I probably needed to make some massive changes if I'd wanted it to work. I probably would have needed to move to Johannesburg. And there were things that I wasn't personally ready to or prepared to do. But if you're working hard and it at least feels like you're moving in the right direction, then stick your course. But if you're getting pulled in a new direction and that actually seems to be smoother and easier, listen, see where it takes you. Be open to be surprised, because as I say, your ego's got very set ideas that are based on like old mindsets, and sometimes your soul is saying, hang on, look at this, you're really good at this, go in this direction, and see where it takes you.
I love the way that you say that it's your ego versus your soul, and that your ego, and listening to the words that you're sprinkling your conversation with, is saying that the ego comes from what mom and dad originally said you should have done, or what society dictates is what success looks like for people. And then to come back to your soul and go, what is success for me? Success for me is not having 10,000 people that I have to tell what to do. Success for me is connecting with my clients in that space. So, and I think that that's a good question to ask every single one of ourselves as entrepreneurs. Go, what does success look like to me? And am I happy with that? Again, your happiness and your gratitude.
Yeah, huge, huge.
Lots of food for thought. Wow, yay! Okay, there we go, we can finish now.
I never know what's going to come out in these conversations, so it's always a lovely process.
And it's such an amazing thing to know that it is a conversation and it's a creativity where what ideas are going to come up with and how's it going to land. I think that that's especially your seminars as well, when you're facilitating. This is the structure, this is what I'm going to discuss, but how does it land with any one particular person and how they're going to assimilate it and change it and adapt it and then come there. So yeah, okay, very interesting, very interesting. So I'm loving what you're giving to us. Thank you very much. And I know that there's going to be a lot of thought coming out of this. So when you look at, okay, we're not going to even talk about tap results. We're going to talk Verity Think Act Succeed. How do you sell yourself?
So that's always the good question to ask me, Pam. I definitely, from the selling that went into being a musician, when I stopped singing, it's like I almost stopped selling. I just had to step back and take a break. And that's why I say I feel like it was a soul calling, the work that I do now, because so much of it happened through word of mouth. And so I'm probably the worst person to ask about this, because it was this happy accident and something would happen. I was very professional. And, if someone asks me for a proposal, like, I make sure that my marketing is done correctly and that my branding and positioning is right. So I was doing all those things, but I wasn't actively selling or doing cold calling, which is a skill that I wish I could learn to do properly. I have my own limiting beliefs that certainly get in the way of that. So all my work has come through relationship building, often sitting next to someone on a plane. Again, your word creates your world. So just by talking to someone, telling them what I believe and what I see and what I enjoy, suddenly they're like, oh, well, I'm the incoming MD at Nampak. Can you come chat to me? And I was like, wow, sure. And so that's kind of how my work has sold itself. And often when I do a keynote, then, people in the audience say, right, I want that energy in my business. But when lockdown hit and when COVID hit, I did realize that I needed to be a lot more strategic in selling myself. So that's been my kind of leveling moment of the last year of just being a little bit more out there, a little bit more focused on marketing, which I'm definitely getting better at. And in terms of, I think I need to stay relevant in the online space. So producing videos, making sure the content I'm sharing is adding value. My newsletters are my best sales thing. I normally get 2 to 3 really big bookings from my newsletters. So that's to my existing market, but I make sure that when I do give a newsletter, I'm not asking for anything. I give them something, I give them a little free bit of content, and then generally they come back saying, oh, can you do more of this in my business? So I always say to people, really focus on what are you giving your customers? Like, be generous in your brand, give stuff away. The business comes back, it finds you. But I definitely, I look at other businesses and I really admire the way they sell. And it's something I probably need someone to sell me for me, because I think you also need to know where your strengths lie. But my best sales is through relationships, through conversations, and then I get a lot of referrals that way. And that has worked. I've had a very successful business to this point. But could it be better? Absolutely.
Okay, so then I have to ask you. So, I mean, I'm sent with you. I'm not the cold calling type. I can't pick up and go, hello, I want to sell you, because it just goes against my grain. Networking has always been my way, because I am a connector and I build relationships. And I mean, look at us, 15 years later, we're still connected, which is, but that's how the networking process works. And you say that you need to up it. Would you, and I'm just trying to understand that you're happy with the way your business is, but you want to sell more. Obviously, we all do, but would the cold calling process or the traditional sales process actually work for you?
No, probably not.
So why go down that route?
No, so I that's why I'm sitting in this lovely unknown of, I realize that this is the selling that I need to do. That if hearing me speak on podcasts like this and someone resonates with it, they'll reach out to me. We'll start that journey together. So my lesson has been that I just need, and I think this is for many businesses, you do need to stay front of mind and you need to stay relevant. And through stretching yourself and trying new things and sharing what you've learned with your customers and with your broader community, that will sell your business for you. So I think if you're selling an actual very set program that's got lots of people to deliver it, then the cold calling can work. But Verity individual phoning, massive corporate HR, like, it's just not going to work. I need to sit next to their incoming MD on a flight, and suddenly he goes, oh, you would have never got in through HR. You're like, there's so many boxes you don't tick, but because we've met and I like what you're doing, here you are. So it's not really a course I could sell people on how to do that. Although I think building relationships and having meaningful conversations with people is going to be anyone's best sales technique. Not going in saying, I'm trying to sell you something, just saying, like, let's share our truth and let's see if there's some synergy that exists that we can do together.
Absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's what I do. And I know that you get these people that phone you and go, hi, I want to buy this from you. I go, okay, well, here it is. And they go, oh, no, but then you're too expensive. I'm going, then it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling that people actually still do that. And because you're a small business, they think they can cut your pricing down and that sort of thing. But why? Why do you want to do that? I have kids that I need to feed, I'm not let's go to the corporates and ask them to cut their price. For the day. And talking of which, so right in the beginning, you were talking about being so hard done by, and I'm never going to make this happen, and the music and all that sort of thing. And yes, I know that having the conversation with your sister changed it, getting the letter from your dad made a huge impact. But isn't that typical of all of us to sit and go, how do you get past that? And how do you, especially if we take into consideration where everyone is at the moment from a COVID point of view, and it's post-lockdown and we're all kind of trying to figure out where we're going, but there's a lot of people suffering, a lot of anxiety and angst, and where to from here? A lot of retrenchments happening. A lot of people are now unemployed. What is that bit of information, or what would you recommend? What is your, help us out here, Verity. Come on.
Okay. I shall. All right. So, and I've had to go through this. This last year has not been easy. I was a new mom going into lockdown. I'd been on maternity leave. As lockdown happened, my husband's business had to shut completely. I suddenly was the sole income provider, but I hadn't been working for 8 months. So, I had some fame, and that's when I realized I hadn't been marketing myself enough, because I was like, whoa, book me, someone. And so I'm not going to lie, I've danced with depression this last year, and I've had some reckoning moments. I started rediscovering that old version of me. It's like, oh, it's so hard, and because it's in me. So maybe I'll just share a little bit on positive psychology, just so people can understand. The research has found that only 10% of our happiness comes from our external circumstances. Okay. Maximum 18%. So if someone's coming from extreme poverty and they have a change of lifestyle, then maybe 18% of their happiness is going to come from an external circumstance, but it averages at about 10. So how much you earn, the car you drive, the house you live in, the job you have, who you're married to, only accurately or contributes to how happy you are by 10%. Okay, so that's why you can't look at a Hollywood star and figure out how happy they are. They've got it all and they're still suffering. Okay, so 50% of our happiness and anxiety and all of these things is genetic. So you can blame that on your parents if you really want to. It's the one time that you can get away with it. But it's kind of preset. So I had on my mom's side a lot of anxiety and depression. So I just have to be aware that when things get tough, that's going to trigger in me like it did in the last year, and I can struggle. But 40% of your happiness and your well-being and your ability to handle stress and kind of be resilient comes from your daily choices. And this really is in our hands. Okay. And that's what this last year has put us up against. And simple things that make the difference, that will shift us from that victim. And it's hard because it is hard, like, and it feels like 90% of our circumstances are making it hard. Like, this has been a rough year, but just understand that it's only fully affecting you. Your genes are getting kicked in, but you've got 40% you can take control over. So things that make a difference is and this is, I'm giving you lots of percentages, but they're quite interesting to be aware of.
I'm taking notes.
Are you taking notes? So only 25% of your success in life comes from your IQ and your skills. This is also looking longitudinally at people's careers. Going, how clever you are and how skilled you are contributes to about 25% of your overall success. What they've noticed, because it's kind of the Forrest Gump theory, I'll say, someone who's got everything against them and still does bloody well, is that your ability to see obstacles as opportunities, your optimism levels, and your social connections, the strength of your social connections, contributes to 75% of success in life. And this is when you're talking about why networking is so powerful. Why is it powerful? You are creating meaningful social connections. What happens? Lockdown suddenly happens and someone phones you up and says, look, I know this is stressful, but I've heard of someone who can help you. It connects us. It helps us survive. Okay, so reaching out to the people that are meaningful to us, and even if it's just a Zoom call like this, it's going to boost your optimism levels. It gets the serotonin going, it gives you oxytocin, which is immediately diminishing your cortisol and your adrenaline, which is what causes your kind of stress response. So just being in community with one or two people, it doesn't need to be a huge group. If it is, that's great. But whoever the people are who make you feel safe and seen and heard and important and loved, that helps you move past this. And as I say, like there my sister was having that brainstorming with me. It got me out of that victim stage. Your ability to see obstacles as opportunities, I'm assuming as entrepreneurs, that's why we entrepreneurs, is we're constantly doing that. But it's being able to hit up against a roadblock and go, how fascinating. How do I find a way around it? Generally, call on someone from your social connections, have a coffee, brainstorm, find a way around it. So, these things tie together. All of this starts to build our optimism and the fact that we feel more resilient. But that's where the choices step in. Okay, so simple little choices, like what my dad encouraged me to do. Just try and write down 3 things every day that you're grateful for. And it'll be all the big ticket items, my family and my house and my health. But eventually it'll be like, wow, that like my favorite coffee cup, or the fact that there was, no red lights on the way to work today. And this trains your brain to scan your world for what's working. Building on that, a lovely exercise, and even if you just do this for 21 days, it can make a huge difference to how much better you feel and less stressed, is to journal one good thing that happens every day. It's important you write it down. And if you're not someone who likes journaling, like start a WhatsApp conversation with a good friend and trade one happy story a day. It's such a lovely exercise. And again, your brain relives that positivity. It starts feeling better, like, oh, it's not that hard. I can figure this out. So 2 beautiful exercises. Mindfulness, which I forget to do. This is the one thing I always have to remind myself. Now I've got an excuse. I've got a baby, like I'm too busy. But my word, make time for mindfulness, even if it's just 5 minutes of being present to your cup of coffee in the morning. That totally lowers our stress response and gets us in the moment. Then random acts of kindness is one of my favorite. And for a business, like to reach out to clients and send them a little note of gratitude or a surprise present. In fact, I just spoke at a conference over the weekend, and one of the other speakers, international speaker, Rainer Petek, he said in lockdown, he made a coffee table book. He's an incredible climber, of all these beautiful ascents he's done. And he sent it, a beautiful hardcover coffee book, and he sent it to his 50 favorite clients as a gift. It connected him to them, and it actually ended up getting him a lot of work. So it was a good strategy, but it was a random act of kindness. They weren't expecting that gift. People won't expect that little voice note telling them how special they are to you. So again, it makes you stop worrying about your problem and noticing what is working. And then the final thing, and we saw a lot of this in lockdown, and it really helped people, is exercise. We were all desperate to get outside and exercise, even if we were couch potatoes before, because exercise shows your brain that your behavior matters. So it needs to be exercise you enjoy. Put on some music, dance around the living room, watch a YouTube thing, or do the Jeff Fitness on Facebook, whatever it is. But all these things boost our optimism levels. And with those heightened optimism levels, we have a much broader perspective of the world, much broader. They've seen this. When someone's happy, they notice more opportunities. When we're stressed, we narrow our focus to survive, which means we've got our head down and we're missing all those things we could be doing. So that's like a simple, practical way, even in these stressful times. This is completely in our control. A little bit of gratitude, taking note of one happy thing, reaching out to a friend, being kind, taking a moment to just breathe and be present, or do a meditation, or go to yoga, and then exercise. That's the stuff that makes the difference. And it's certainly been what shifted me as I've struggled in the last year. It was a very long answer. My apologies.
Oh, that's so pertinent right now, because although you're talking about all the stuff that we know, and I sit down and say, yeah, but everyone's saying it. The fact that you've added the percentages of 10% and 50% and 40% and 25% of your success is IQ and skill, I'm going, yes, it means I can still be success. Because the 75% I got. Whoop, whoop.
We've got it.
But it kind of puts it all into perspective. And I 100%, I remember, where I am a runner, so that's what I do. And in lockdown, I started running around the house. It was completely bizarre, but it was so much fun. And we created these weird and wonderful things that we do. So I get you. It's great to hear that other people have gone through the same thing, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And knowing what that light is, or how to achieve getting to that light, is really, really... so I don't have to freak out too much. It's not just because I do know.
I'm glad.
And because, as you say, the amount of people, I'm one of the lucky ones because I do have a network, and we connected every week. Once a week, we made sure we had a Zoom meeting, and that was my saving grace. It was without even realizing it, that I connected with people once a week. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Wow, there's been a lot. Okay, now we're over again, you see. Thank you. So we've realized that you've got to sell the way that you have to sell for yourself, irrelevant. And that you've got to follow what works for you. And then you've got all these wonderful things of how to make life work, just in general. If you had to take your entrepreneurial journey and go, what is the one thing that you could advise someone going out on their own for the first time?
Sure, it's a good big question. I think, no, I like that, and it's like, what is that one thing? I think maybe what it comes down for me is the vision of where you're going. I call it your desired outcome. It needs to excite you so much that you would rather, trip over many things to get there than stay where you are. Like you need to see, and it can't be a safe vision. It has to be a vision that stretches you. I put out there, I believe I can sell an album that doesn't exist and challenge the music industry. That was like a big vision. But I was like, but what if I can? How awesome would that be? And that's what got me going. So that's the one thing, is you have to have a vision that really excites you, that you're passionate about. And when I do my keynotes, I always have a picture of the Wright brothers behind me at this point, because I say you don't get more passionate than that, going, I believe that I can turn bicycle parts into a flying machine. And they just kept coming back, and they kept coming back because they'd seen a vision and a future that excited them more than the present or the past. So you need that. And then you have to build your community around you to get you there. And that's where your word is going to create your world. So speak your vision, tell your story, paint that picture, and that's going to draw that community and those social connections that will be a stand for you and will move you there. And so this is more than just one thing, but anyway, I'm just giving it to you. And then every step of the way, become very good friends with gratitude. They say you will never be on speaking terms with happiness until you learn the language of gratitude. And we want to make our businesses fly because we believe that's when we'll be happy. But if you get grateful now at the start of your journey, that happiness is what will fuel you and draw people to you to make that vision a reality.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lots of answers, absolutely. But the desired outcome as a goal, fantastic. And then it's almost like that's the number one. But in order to get all these other little bits. Thank you so much, Verity. It's been so listening to you, I kind of go, yes, there's been a lot of little failures. You've said so, little hiccups here and there and that sort of thing. But if there's anything that you can go, wow, that was a huge, huge failure. What was it and how did you overcome it?
Sure. Gosh, I don't think anyone's ever even asked me that question. That's a great question, Pam. A huge failure. To be honest, I don't even know. I don't feel like there's been a huge failure. There's been disappointments, but nothing didn't work completely. But I will tell you what probably a lot of people would consider a huge failure is being invited on stage at a Robin Banks talk. He gave me the opportunity to speak to his audience in Johannesburg when I was telling people about buying this album. And he did a rock star welcome for me. And if you've ever seen Robin Banks, you'll know. It's like, we've got this young
amazing
singer. And it was like, I'm backstage. I've got my little headset on. I feel like Madonna. I'm like, I've made it. I've arrived. And he goes, give it up for Verity Price. And the whole crowd's like, wow, 600 people. And I run onto stage like, this is it. And I get to the last step and I trip and I sprawl on the stage in front of 600 people. And they all go, it's this moment, because that's everyone's worst nightmare. That's like epic failure in speaking or being in front of people. And I'm lying on the stage, literally looking at the carpet. And in that moment, so I have to take you back a little bit. In that moment, I had been trained by a voice coach in America named Joe, who was a very strange character. And he used to say to me, Verity, I don't need to teach you to sing. I need you to teach you to be confident and to believe in yourself. And his way to teach confidence was to make you comfortable with failure. Okay. And he would like turn up the music, turn off the music, knock over the mic, shout at me. And he's like, you just keep going. You just learn to be okay with things not being okay, because that's life. So here I am, like on the floor, looking at the carpet, everyone's going, and I just turned around to this audience and I went, well, folks, I can only go up from here. They laughed, I laughed, I kind of dusted myself off. And the fact that I was okay with things not being okay made it okay. And I talked to them for 10 minutes. At the end of that session, over 300 people bought my album. Like more than 50% of the room closed on that album, which is like, as you know, with sales, that's an unbelievable number. And I only had 10 minutes to speak to them. And it's because I'd fallen down. It's because I failed spectacularly in front of them. And I just was like, oh, well, be with it, own it, be vulnerable, as Brené Brown would say, and get on with it. So that's one of my moments that stands out for me. And Joe's lesson that you just keep going, you just be okay, you acknowledge the elephant in the room, and you just get on with it. And that was such a special moment for me.
Wow, Verity, that is such an amazing takeaway. Thank you so much, because you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, you can't go any further down than that, can you? I mean, no. But to be that vulnerable and acknowledge it, I think that makes you human, that makes you authentic, and that makes people want a piece of that. And you can't get a piece of it unless you buy the album, you know? Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Verity, thank you so much. I will have your links and all the rest put on our down in the bottom below the podcast and the video. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
My closing thought would be you always have a choice. You can either let life happen to you, or you can make life happen because of you. I hope you choose the second one.
Thank you so much, Verity. I really appreciate your time. It's been such an inspiration, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. And just, keep up this wonderful work, inspiring entrepreneurs. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview and that you feel inspired to take your business to the next level. Please subscribe for more, connect with me and the community online at I Work For Me, and head over to the website for interesting reads and resources. If you like, you can support the team by buying them a coffee. Until next time, keep up the grind.